First thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to apply the SkimStone Bonding Primer. The bonding primer comes ready to use. All you have to do once you open it up is give it a good stir in the bucket. I always like to stir the bonding primer rather than using some sort of mechanical drill to mix this up. You don't want to introduce too much air into it so that it doesn't dry out too quickly. Once you have it nice and stirred up, just take a small amount of bonding primer, put it out onto the surface, and using a straight edge metal trowel, you can just hold it at a 45-degree angle and spread it in a really thin coat. We want to spread it thin enough so that we're only going as thick as the aggregate that's in the bonding primer. The bonding primer we primarily use to go over non-porous surfaces, where SkimStone can be used on existing concrete that's porous and has a little bit of a rough surface. The bonding primer will allow you to stick to laminate countertops, tile floors. It also lets you go over concrete that has been previously sealed, or if you're just not sure, if you don't know what the concrete is, if you don't know if it's porous enough, you don't know if it's rough enough, you can do a coat of the bonding primer, and that will allow you to have a little peace of mind that you're going to get good adhesion. The bonding primer will stick to your substrate, and it'll also create a nice tooth for the SkimStone to stick to. Just apply it so that you get 100% coverage. Keep your edges sort of rounded so that when you come back and apply your next coat, if any of these burnish through, it'll look like part of the finished look and not necessarily like a trowel product. When we use bonding primer over a concrete floor, we do one coat of the bonding primer. When that coat is finished, we allow the bonding primer to dry overnight, and then we continue on with the SkimStone product. When we do countertops or when we're going over tile, we do 2 coats of the bonding primer. This gives us a little more of an even sort of canvas to start our SkimStone on, and that's what we're going to show you how to do today. We've done our first coat. We're going to let this dry about 4 hours. You need about 4-hour dry time in between coats of bonding primer, and we'll come back and we'll do the second coat of bonding primer. After your first coat of bonding primer is dry, it'll look something like this. Now, if you're only going to be using 1 coat of bonding primer over a floor surface, you do need to let it dry overnight, but you can come back after it's dry to the touch and prep it so that it's not as much work the next day. If you're going to be doing 2 coats of bonding primer, just wait until it's dry to the touch, prep it, but make sure you let it dry a good 4 hours before you do the second coat. The bonding primer, if it's still a little bit damp, not quite dry enough, can re-emulsify. And what will end up happening is you'll pull some of the primer back off of the surface because you'll be re-wetting that original coat, and that's never fun. So to prep the bonding primer in between coats or before starting the SkimStone, you just can use the edge of a trowel or putty knife to sort of scrape off all these little rough spots that you leave behind. Or alternately, you could use a piece of sandpaper. I like 100 grit sandpaper, but you could use anything as aggressive as 80 grit or as fine as 220 grit if you wanted to. Once you've sanded the entire surface, you want to get all of that sanding dust off of the surface. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Sweep that all up or vacuum it up, and then you can go ahead and do an application of a second coat of primer. Take a little bit of the primer. Again, 2 coats of primer is recommended for going over countertop surfaces, especially laminate or tile. On a floor surface, we generally recommend just the 1 coat. I'm using the same application technique as my first coat. I'm holding my trowel at a 45-degree angle, using sort of semicircular motions to put the primer down. I still want to put it down really paper thin. I'm not trying to build with the primer, I'm just trying to get 100% coverage and fill in all of the texture that was produced by the first coat of primer. If the primer starts to set up on you or it's not moving or spreading as easily as you'd like it to, you can pick it up, scrape it back into the bucket, stir it back in and continue working. As I work the primer across the surface, I like to clean off my trowel and then just with a real feather sort of light touch, go back through and pick up any little ridges that I left behind with my trowel. If I clean my trowel before doing that, then I'm not putting new product onto the surface and creating more ridges as I work. So just a real light touch, smooth out those ridges. We're going to have the opportunity to come back in and sand this after this coat is dry, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just don't want any real high ridges left behind. And that's how you put the second coat on. Again, the second coat needs to dry overnight prior to beginning the SkimStone application. How to mix the SkimStone, tint the type 1 solution, add the powder, etc. That's coming right up, so don't go away.